I've known my wife, Emily, since we were kids. Our families were close, and with few people our age around, dating felt inevitable. We got married young, and by the time I turned 30, we had our first child. Parenthood changed everything. The stress of work and raising a child wore me down, and Emily's pregnancy had strained our intimacy. Frustrated and searching for an escape, I signed up for a dating site. At first, it was just curiosity. A one-time thing. But the thrill of meeting someone new, someone younger, was intoxicating. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just a way to blow off steam. But I kept going. I kept meeting women. Eventually, Emily found out. I gave the usual apologies, swore it meant nothing, but deep down, I wasn't sorry. The only woman I had ever been with was my wife, and suddenly, I had discovered an entirely new world of possibilities. Then I met Akari. She was breathtaking, sharp, confident, beautiful in a way that made me feel like I had been living in black and white before she came along. I couldn't believe someone like her was on a dating site, and when she said she wanted to be with me, I was hooked. I showered her with gifts, designer bags, high-end cosmetics, expensive dinners. I even dipped into the savings I had set aside for my family. Akari, sweet and understanding, told me to slow down, that I didn't need to buy her things. Her kindness only pulled me in deeper. One weekend, Emily had to leave town for a funeral, and I saw an opportunity. I invited Akari over to my house. My son, just 4 years old, took to her instantly. That night, she cooked for us, and we sat together like a picture-perfect family. When my son finally drifted off to sleep, I snuck out with Akari to a hotel, convinced I had covered my tracks. I was wrong. When we returned, the house was gone. A towering inferno stood where my home had been. My hands shook as I turned my phone back on. A flood of missed calls from Emily, from neighbors, from unknown numbers. My heart stopped when I read the message, "Your son is in the hospital." I raced there, my mind reeling. Emily was already at his bedside, tears streaming down her face. My son, our son, was burned. Half his face, his legs. The doctors weren't sure if he would ever fully recover. When I tried to explain, the words stuck in my throat. My wife just stood there, listening, her face a mask of emptiness. When I finished, she slapped me hard across the face and told me to leave. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled like a horror story. The fire had started in the kitchen. The pot of chili Akari had made, left unattended, had ignited, engulfing the house in flames. My son had been alone when the fire broke out. He had screamed for me, but I wasn't there. I was in bed with Akari. I told her we were done. But Akari, ever composed, simply said, "If I have nowhere else to go, we should be together." It wasn't a request. It was a statement. Emily's family demanded a meeting. A discussion of divorce, compensation, child support. I dreaded facing them, but Akari, confident as ever, insisted on coming along. "I'll talk to her," she said, as if she had any leverage left. The meeting was surreal. Emily sat quietly, her parents beside her, emotionless. Then Akari spoke. She declared that Emily and I had planned to divorce from the beginning, that I would pay alimony, and that we would take the child. My stomach dropped. Her words were absurd. What was she thinking? Emily, eerily calm, simply nodded. Then she stood up and walked to the kitchen. When she returned, she was holding a hammer. The room froze. In one swift motion, she swung it. The impact was sickening, a dull, wet thud against Akari's face. Blood splattered across the floor. Emily stood over her, expressionless. "I don't need compensation," she said. "I just want a part of you." Akari gasped, her hands trembling as she touched her ruined face. But Emily wasn't finished. She pulled out a photograph of our son, his burned, broken body. "Can you still see?" she asked Akari. "We should fix that." Before anyone could react, the hammer came down again, this time toward Akari's eye. Her scream was raw, inhuman. Emily's father watched without a hint of shock. Then he turned to Akari's parents, who had just arrived. They took one look at their daughter and didn't rush to her aid. Instead, they bowed their heads and apologized. I later learned they were indebted to Emily's family, financially and otherwise. They weren't here to save Akari. They were here to abandon her. The nightmare didn't end there. Outside, neighbors had gathered, whispering, watching. It was as if the entire town had known what would happen tonight. I wanted to run, to call the police, to do something, anything, but I couldn't move. Emily's father turned to me. "What will you do?" I had no choice. I did as I was told. When I finally went to the authorities, they turned me away. Emily's family had connections. There would be no arrests, no charges. My lawyer told me I could fight it, but they couldn't guarantee my safety if I did. So I gave up. Emily's family made one final demand: castration. A punishment for my betrayal. I obeyed. I never saw Akari again. And I never left Emily. On the surface, life returned to normal. But I saw my wife, my in-laws, our neighbors, everyone, through new eyes. They smiled, they laughed, they went about their daily lives as if nothing had happened. But I knew the truth. One night, I came home late. The dining table was set, candles flickering. "Happy birthday," Emily said with a smile. In the center of the table was a steaming bowl of stew, just like the one Akari had made that night. And I understood. I would never escape. I would never be free. I picked up my spoon and took a bite.